Hey, my name is Brian, and I'm with Dylan here. This is Practical Church Planning, and today we're talking about 7 tips for increasing your Sunday attendance.
And this episode is brought to you by Mission Support. We're big fans of Mission Support, and they've also helped a number of you guys in the Practical Church Planning community. Mission Support knows that you want to be effective in ministry, but like most pastors, you probably feel like you never have enough time, energy, or expertise to get everything done. So Mission Support comes alongside pastors like you as a guide to provide expertise to do the things you don't know how to do and give you back the time you desperately need. And so whether it's bookkeeping, SEO, websites, a capital campaign, or any of their other services, you can talk to a guy today at missionsupport.com and go from scattered to focus on your mission. It's possible to love being a pastor again. So check them out, missionsupport.com. And if you tell them you heard about them from Practical Church Planning, you get 10% off any of the services that you use. So check them out, missionsupport.com. And I want to say also real quickly, February 21st, I'm doing another Zoom training, this time on sermon prep. One of the things I found is that a lot of time is wasted on sermon prep. So if you want to be more effective, be sure to join that. You can get the link to the Practical Church Planning Academy in the, what am I trying to say? In the description of this podcast.
Yep.
The show notes. There you go. Or practicalplanning.com. You can join the Practical Academy and join the sermon prep training. Now, today we're talking about 7 tips for increasing your Sunday attendance. And historically, whenever we have talked about increasing or growing your church, it's always a highly downloaded episode.
Yeah.
So, which, makes sense. I just always laugh because some people are like, attendance growth, you shouldn't focus on it. But it's like, well, everybody wants to hear about it. So.
But and you want people in your church.
Yeah, I know people in church. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think most people listening to this are not those people, so whatever. But here are 7 tips for increasing your Sunday attendance. These are things that we are trying literally right now at New City Church. We are trying to focus more in on Sunday attendance, not because we want a bunch of people in a building, but because it's just, we believe it's really formative and important for someone's spiritual journey. I think most of you would agree with this. All the spiritual, mature people that I look up to in my personal life all prioritize the local gathering. I'm sure there's exceptions, here or there, but those are the exceptions. Most people do. And so here, how can we do this? Not for the sake of trying to get more people because it feels good, but because we want people to be in community as they're trying to follow Jesus. And so we're doing a couple of things this year as we're really trying to focus in on this and trying to encourage people to, make this a priority. Not because, again, we want to check a box, but because it's good for them. So here we go. 7 tips. Number 1, encourage new guests to try you multiple times. So I did a residency years ago at a church, and they did this thing called Try 5. Mm-hmm. So I texted the pastor, about a month ago. I was like, "You guys still doing this?" And he was like, "Yes," and we will always keep doing it. So basically, what they do is when they mention their Connect card during next steps, which we encourage you to do this every week, is they do this thing with like Try 5, and I don't remember their exact wording, but it's like, "Hey, try us 5 times." And so we have come up for New City. We'd call it the Try 3 challenge.
Well, I try 3 at New City.
That's right. Try 3 at New City.
It kind of rhymes, depends on how you say it.
Try 3 at New City. You can do whatever number. We kind of felt like if we said 5, most people don't go to church 5 times in a row, and we didn't want them to be like, that seems impossible and not even try it. Yeah. So our encouragement is during our Connect moment, we do the whole Connect card. Then we say, hey, we know it's really hard to find a new church. We also know it's really hard to know all there is about a church in one Sunday. So we encourage you to come back 3 times, and we think after that you'll have a good idea of whether or not this is the church for you. And so we're trying to say that every week. For a couple of reasons. One, a lot of times if people are looking for a church, their first thought when they leave is, where should we go next week? And it's not a competition. It's not like we're trying to not let them go anywhere else. But it's like it does take more than 1 week. And so trying to encourage that habit. I also think the more that we do this, literally we just started doing this a couple weeks ago, the more that our own people will hear this language, the more that they might say this to people when they're having conversations. Yeah. Well, you should try us out 3 times. Yeah. And I think that'll be really helpful too. And so we're doing that at the beginning, or when we do at our next steps, and then of course at the end of service, when we mention the Connect card again, we literally say, try us 3 times. In our follow-up email, the first email we send, it's like, hey, we know, again, finding church really hard. We encourage you to come back 3 times. Whatever that number is for you, however you want to say it, however you want to make it rhyme, try that and see if it can encourage people to come back at least more than once to see whether or not this is a church that might be good for them.
We tossed around the idea of something about, was it Connect 4?
Yes.
That got shot down.
I liked it, but it was like you had to explain what you meant by Connect 4.
Yeah, because, basically we're going to give out those little Connect 4 little tokens as just like a reminder. Because when you go away from church or anywhere with something like, what is this? And you remember it.
Yep.
But yeah, if you have to explain your tagline or whatever, it's probably not a good tagline.
Yep.
But yeah, try 3 at New City. It's catchy, but we have to, I'm still trying to remember to say it. Even from a video that I did recently, I didn't say it. So it's just, it's repetition. And like I've said, I think in previous podcasts, you're competing for people's time, and so you want to encourage them to try something out at least 3 times, and then pivot, go somewhere else, or come 4 or 5, 6 times and then join, something like that.
So no idea if it'll work for us. I've been told it works for other places. It makes sense, that it would. And so I'd recommend trying to do a phrase. You got to do it every single week. And so we're trying to get everyone to do this. What I'll also say this too is you want to say it the same way. So our next step people, what I've been doing is I've been emailing them, say this. Because if you people say it differently, it's not going to work. So for us, it's literally do the Connect card thing, however they want to do it. And then it's like, hey, we know finding a church, looking for a new church is really hard. We also know it's hard to know all there is about a church in one Sunday. And so if you're new with us, we invite you to come back 3 times because we think after 3 weeks, you'll have a really good idea of whether or not this is the church for you. It doesn't have to be like that word for word, but it has to be really close. And so whatever this is, you do want to make sure your people explaining it are at least somewhat consistent. Otherwise, that will take away from what you're trying to do. Yep. So encourage new guests to try you multiple times. You can pick the number, make it rhyme with your church name or something, but you want to be consistent with it. And you want to try it over a long period of time. That's what we're going to do. Number 2 is to encourage or challenge your people to make their local gathering a priority. So this is more for your own church people. I might have mentioned this by the end of last year. It's just having conversations. I know I've said this on the podcast. It seems to me my anecdotal observation is you have the people that are still coming most weeks, serving, giving, you're super involved. You have a lot of people post-COVID who just never came back. And there seems to be a large gap, at least in the Raleigh area, and pastors that I talk to, where people come, but they come like about 1 less Sunday a month. So if they're 3 out of 4, now they're not 2 out of 4. And if they're 2 out of 4, they're like 1 out of 4. And what I have observed, it's not that people necessarily don't love Jesus or don't care, but it's no longer a priority. It's if I'm in town for the weekend and I'm not tired or don't have anything else going on, I will be there. But I won't really plan around it at all. And so what we're trying to do is to encourage people that you should do that at some times. Now, how we're doing it, how I've been doing it this year from stage and in conversations with people, we've been doing this. It's kind of like the Try-3 at New City, but for your own people. We're not saying it this way, but I'm encouraging people to try to commit to 3 out of 4 Sundays a month. That's 39 Sundays a year because there's a couple 5-week, that sort of thing. And say, hey, listen, if you're out of town, you've got something going on, go do that thing. But in order to make it 3 out of 4 Sundays a month, there are going to be times where you have to come back from that thing early, or come back, don't stay out as late, or be proactive about your schedule to make it happen. And the challenge with this is you don't want to guilt anybody to do anything because they better do it or else. It's because it's good for them, it's good for us. We miss out on one another if we're not there. And so encouraging your people, talking about it more. Again, how I've been doing it, again, we're just starting this year. And so I've got it in a couple sermons and our last Discover lunch. I mentioned it this way in my one-on-one conversations. I'm encouraging people to commit to 3 out of 4 Sundays because that is really attainable. And, it's still missing a good amount. Now, of course, if you could do more than that, more than 39 Sundays a year, I think that's great.
Yeah.
But I think average people, to give them, not just say, hey, you should come more and here's why, but to actually make it tangible, I think is really helpful. And so that's what I'm doing 3 out of 4 Sundays. But I would just encourage you to talk about it in a winsome and kind way and not a guilt way. But don't be afraid, because we know that the gathering is important for people's spiritual development and walking with Jesus. And so I've just found like it's easier to talk about money or groups or serving, but it seems like self-serving to talk about Sundays, but it's just important. And so, we got to find creative ways to do that.
It's one of those things where, especially post-COVID, people found other things to occupy their weekends because other things were, shut down. And so then also with streaming, there's positives and I guess negatives to where they can watch it later. And so it's not just about the sermon. It says Dylan has emphasized, it's about the community, and you can kind of even use some of your small groups or your community groups to leverage them coming back to church on Sundays. Like, man, if they're with an awesome group, if you prioritize those groups, they're going to want to come back Sunday. They're going to want to, schedule their schedules around church. And, as Dylan said, don't guilt them, which that's all in language. So be thoughtful about the precision of your language. English it's a fun language, but a lot of people are sarcastic. I can be, so it's like usually when I say something like, are you being serious right now? Just be cautious with that. Just encourage, because they're probably like, I want to come back to church. I want to do this, but right now life's too busy. And so the more that you can encourage them, the more they'll be like, I should probably start prioritizing this again.
Yeah. So again, trying to think of ways to do that. That's not guilt driven. I think 3 out of 4 is a great thing to use. If you can maybe find that way to put that in your language, if you find that helpful, I don't know. But encouraging your people, challenging them to make it a priority, and knowing if the mindset is, I'm not saying you say it this way. This is just my observation. The mindset is, I'll be there as long as I don't have anything else going on. Well, that's why you're going to see a lot less engagement, because it's just easy not to put other things there because it's not a priority. So you want to get people to think about it that way. Number 3 is acknowledging the feelings of new guests in your follow-up process. So we mentioned this a little bit too. We try to say from stage. I just noticed, when we have when new people come and I'm having these conversations, one of the things I say often is, "Hey, I know finding a new church is really hard." And there's always like this, "You're right." It's like, thank you for acknowledging that. And so we were like, "Oh, we should probably include this in our language." And so from stage, we say, or at least we're trying to get in the habit of saying, "Hey, we know finding a new church is really hard." And then, we have a follow-up process. They get a series of texts and emails over like the course of 3 weeks. And the first text is like, "Hey, thanks for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions." But then on Monday morning, they get an email. And it used to be some information about the church of like, here's groups or here's whatever, serving or whatever. Well, I've changed that to now it's like hardly anything about the church. And it's really just, "Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Again, we know finding a new church can be really, really hard. It can be intimidating. You don't know anybody." I don't remember the exact way I've worded this, but it's kind of like this effect. And then we also say, because of that, we encourage you to try us 3 times. We think after that, you'll have a much better idea whether or not it's a church for you. And then I think there's like one thing about maybe our website, or I forget what it is, but it's like, that's it. Like there's nothing about groups or serving, or there's nothing. And it's so, I think again, that's just lets people know, hey, like we're here. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks so much for coming. We'll send you some more information, later. And so then the next email they get, like on a Friday, there's some information about groups or partnership or discover. I don't remember exactly what they get at what email. But the first one is just, "Hey, thanks for being here. Try us again." And even from stage, and even in you're talking to people, just acknowledging the feelings of new guests, I just found it to be really helpful.
And it also kind of gives this no obligation type of thing,
Yeah.
because you want people to come to church because it's something they want, not out of obligation. And so that first email, considering their feelings is really important. And if it really makes them comfortable, or like, "Hey, I want to learn more," people know how to Google. I mean, they're teaching this in kindergarten, I guess. I don't know. People know how to research, so they're going to look out. But then if they don't find something, then that follow-up email. But that first one is so important to consider their feelings. So, yeah, that's awesome.
And part of this is you do have to believe it. Like, we really do believe. Like, for us, it's not about New City. It's about we want people to be connected in a community. I mean, we like New City, but there's a lot of great churches in our area. And so it's easy to say this because we believe it. Like, it's not like you have to come here. We want you to be connected somewhere. And so saying things like, "Hey, it's really hard to join a new church." Now, I would say this: it's easier to do this when you've been around. When you're brand new and you're planting and you're just like desperate. I remember. I know what it's like. You're like, "Please come back." It just reminds me of, if you remember, it was the Republican primary in like 2016 with Jeb Bush. He was like somewhere and he's like, "Please clap." Nobody was clapping. He's like, "Please clap. Please come back." Anyway, that was a funny video. I remember it. You got to believe, like, hey, like it is hard. And so trying to lead with that, like, "Hey, we're here. If this is not the church for you," and I hear me. I know when I say, if this is the church for you or not, it sounds very, I don't know, seeker sensitive, for lack of a better word, or maybe consumeristic. But like, it's the language that people understand, and so I'm comfortable using it. Like, I know it's not about finding a church that meets all your preferences, but it is about finding a church that you're comfortable with. And so you can word it differently if you don't like that language, that's fine. But just acknowledging the feelings of being new as you talk about the Connect card in your follow-up process, I think will just give you some, I don't really know what the word is. There'll just be some trust built there because they realize that you acknowledge it's hard to be where they're at. So that's number 3. Acknowledge the feelings of a new guest. Number 4, Sunday-specific events. So we found there's lots of different events and things that you can do. Now, this point is best. I mean, it's not only, but it's really best if you only have one service. So we have been at one service for a while. We announced on Sunday as of this recording, we're going to 2 services in 2 weeks. Because we've been full, and so great, all that great stuff. But we've been like trying to think of some Sunday specific. What we try to do for the first quarter of this year and into April is we planned one Sunday thing a month that if you're not here in person, you don't get to partake in. So as of this, like in January, we did like a breakfast, which you don't normally do. In February, we were gonna do this nacho average Valentine's lunch because it's super cheesy. We did it last year. People loved it. The problem now is we're going to 2 services on that Sunday, February 12th, and so we can't do it because doing like a lunch is hard when you've got two services, or doing like a cookout. I'm not saying you can't, but it makes it harder for people at the first service. But you could do so in March. We're doing like free socks. We're doing New City socks. It's going to be great. I don't know how many people care about this, but it's going to be awesome. And then in April on our 6-year anniversary, we're doing a free shirt Sunday, which we've never done before. It's going to be pretty not cheap, but I've heard of other churches that do it, and people they just love it. It's a fun thing to do. And so we've got things each month that it's like, if you're not here, you're going to miss out on. Now, again, we're not trying to like, I don't know, manipulate people into coming. We're not trying to like, but it's like, hey, this is a fun thing. Get a pair of socks if that helps you be here to experience everything else in community. Great, you know. But Sunday specific events, we've just found they're really, really helpful. So again, it's really easy. If you're at one service, you could do a breakfast, you could do a lunch, you could do something after service, whatever that is. But it just kind of incentivizing, for lack of a better word, people to show up on Sunday, because if they don't come, they can't partake in whatever thing you're doing.
Yeah. No, and it's one of those things where when I grew up, I went to Southeastern Seminary, graduated 2009, and there was kind of like this idea of a lot of different churches where it's like, oh, Jesus isn't something to be sold,
Right.
and I was kind of a part of like, yeah, I get what you're saying there, and even with this, it's like really thoughtfully thinking through, well, why are we doing this? This is something fun, but a lot of times people don't know, or they've had bad experiences with churches, or they've been a part of churches that just didn't really. I don't know, the way the sermon was delivered wasn't bad. It just didn't really resonate with them, which is fine. Everybody has different ways that they learn and process things. And so this is just a way to kind of get them in the door to find out, hey, this could be something that you can find as a home. If not, we'll help you find another church.
Yep.
But this is just trying to, just giving them a reason to, again, competing with other things for their time. It's just a reason to get them into the church and experience something that they might not even known existed.
Yeah. And so, I think the word was gimmicky. We're not trying to be gimmicky.
Yeah.
Like, we're not giving away an iPad or giving away money. I don't know. I mean, you could say a shirt is gimmicky. I don't know. But it's like, it's cool. People want it. It's like, it's a New City shirt, so it's like a fun thing or whatever. And so just think of Sunday-specific things to encourage people like, hey, we're doing this thing in a couple weeks. We'd love for you to be here. And just a way for people to be maybe proactively thinking, oh, I'm going to try to be there for this thing. Now, it's a T-shirt. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but it's just like a fun reminder of like, oh, this is happening. I'm going to try to be there. So you can't do this every week. I get it. But maybe there are certain things. Again, food is a great option if it's at one service. I mean, you could do food stuff for two services or multiple. It's just a little bit harder. But take advantage of that if you're at one service. Cookouts, hot dogs are cheap.
Not cookout, but cookouts.
Yes, that's right.
Cookout
And if you're in the
kilo
South, a
cheap.
barbecue and a cookout are two different
That's
things. Cookout is like hamburgers and hot dogs.
Yep.
That's not a barbecue.
Nope.
Barbecue is a type of one's a noun, one's a verb. In the South, they're different.
Got them on the tangent.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, Sunday specific events after church or even during the service. If there's something, I don't know, special that week. I mean, here's a great example of this: Christmas and Easter. So this is a great. You're doing something different. And I know it's like Christmas and Easter, so there's also that like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to go to church, so people come. But you tell people, hey, this is going to be a little bit different. Here's what we're doing. It's the same sort of idea, just doing it more often,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So just think through. There might be some cool things in your area that you might want to do that is Sunday specific that you can say ahead of time. You got to like tell people so people know it's coming. And so maybe it would encourage them to prioritize actually being there. So that's number 4. Number 5, improve your gathering environment. Now, what we mean by that is like the space and what it actually looks like. So we're doing, again, this is all stuff that we're doing right now. It can be easy to forget when you're been there for a while what it looks like when you're new. Mm-hmm. And so, again, if you're portable, there's only so much you can do, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do anything. And so trying to like have a clean environment, have a welcoming environment, have things that make sense, have signage if you need it. That all these things help. Like, so for us, our lobby is long and thin, so things are pretty easy. Like, we don't really need a lot of signage of like where to go. But even with that, like, we have a teal wall currently. We're going to change it, but right now we have a teal wall where if you're new, it's like, hey, go to the teal wall. We've got a coffee bar area. We just took down the coffee bar. It's here when we moved in. It was too big, and so we made these like coffee carts, and we've got like church plants we support. Anyway, we're in the process of moving things around. But if your place is confusing, if it's dirty, if it's like really big and awkward, like if it kind of kills like the energy. I was part of a church one time, and they met in this school, and the lobby area was so big, and I kept saying, we should pipe and drape some of the lobby so that if people are, and like it didn't happen for like the longest time. And I was like, I feel like this is such an easy fix. And so trying to just like, this is the same thing with, I mean, this is I mean, I guess this goes with Sunday as well. Like, so right now we're at one service is, but we've got all of our chairs out. And so when we go to two services, we're going to be taking chairs away. And so because you want people to be a little bit closer together and not have like all this space where there is no energy. And so I like to think of it this way too, especially if you're space, if you're in a school, they've got to walk a little bit, or maybe it's just a little confusing. If you could think of your space like an airport, where like an airport, there's signage that if you're looking around, you can get where you need to go without asking anybody. Now, it's not that you don't want people to talk to people, but some people like they're new, they don't want to ask a lot of questions. If it's confusing, they might not be back. So create your space in such a way that if you need signage, it's very clear where things are without them having to ask. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with them asking, but some people, I don't know, they're new, they want to come in and they don't want to do that. And so I don't know if that's helpful, but anyway, your gathering environment, is it clean? Is it clear where to go? Do new people know where to go? Again, if you say things like, hey, come to the Connect table, a new person doesn't know what a Connect table is. Like, there should probably be some sort of marker that you can say, the Connect table is here for that purposes. But thinking through your environment and improving that if you need to.
We have one of our responsibilities on Sunday morning is like a cleanup setup team. And so I guess I say all that to say this, clean your bathrooms. I think, sometimes it gets overlooked, like, oh, not many people use it during the week, but it's like, no, you can understand like how much it gets used on a Sunday. And we two other churches will use our space if they have services Friday and Saturday, which is right before Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they do their response, they do their due diligence and they clean and stuff like that. But still, going in
always
there,
clean great.
yes, always clean great. It's just, and also don't buy one ply toilet
Yes.
paper. Like it's it's almost
Amen.
like you think about it. Well, we're trying to really save money. It's like,
Yes.
I get that, but when you show people that you care for. Going to the bathroom, like in a public place, is not always fun. So if you can make them as comfortable as possible, make the
Yes.
process as easy as possible, and he shows, hey, they care about when I have to use the restroom or when I'm not feeling well or anything like that. You don't want them to like be scared to come because something might happen and they don't.
Yep.
There's not a good environment for them to kind of, I don't know, go outside and take a break.
If you heard nothing else, no buy one ply toilet paper.
Yes,
It just is like, ugh. I'd also say this too. Depending on your space, if you're the one that buys the toilet paper, then I mean, if you're at a public school, whatever, obviously, and people know that. If it's your own space, people also know like why not. I'd also say too, like if you're renting or whatever, making sure that there's a place for feminine products in the women's restrooms. Like our stalls have these things built in where they can put their trash there without having to go out somewhere. So thinking through these things, just like you want to make it comfortable. For us too, around our building, there's a gas station really close to us, and there's a McDonald's, and the gas station has like this casino thing. It's great. They just started doing it. Like you can Great. Anyway, all that means is that there's trash. And so as part of our setup, we have someone that goes around the building with like a trash picker upper. And it would be really easy to be like, oh, well, that's over there. No one's really going to see it. People will see it, and it just looks bad. And so improving your gathering, keeping it clean, moving things around, spending a little bit of money on it if you need to, because it matters. It's really easy to be like, well, this isn't that important. Let's spend money on other things. But it just, first impressions matter. How an environment feels matters to people. And so, making sure your gathering environment looks good.
And not one ply.
Number 5. Number 6, tell people about your desire. So our original plan going into this year was to go to 2 services on first week of April, because our 6th year, and the next week is Easter. And I was like, we've done 2 services pre-COVID, our previous space. Like we've been through it, and we know not everybody loves 2 services. People want to be together or whatever. I've just like, starting in December now we're going in February because we just, it's been full, so whatever. But like I was telling people, I was like, hey, we're going to 2 services at the beginning of April. And I was telling people like, hey, part of this reason is like we're pro church planting. We support a lot of churches. We think there's a good thing here that people can connect to. We also like financially, we're much better stewards of our building at 2 services. It brings the percentage of our budget down, how much we're paying for our rent and all that sort of thing. And so like it's just financially better if you can be at 2 services. And so I just started like telling people personally, like, here's the desire, here's where I want to do it. And it didn't last very long because now we just have to. But I would like, you don't have to like go on stage and make all these announcements all the time, but even in your conversations, like don't be afraid of being honest. If you're in a group, like tell your group about your desires. But yeah, for us, like one of the things this year is we wanted to go to 2 services and we wanted to engage more people. And so I just have these conversations with people so that people can start thinking about it. And I don't know, they're not surprised or upset. Maybe upset's not the right word, but bummed when you have to go from 1 to 2 services.
Well, that was the first thing that you said to staff, like our first staff meeting, I think, of the year was we're going to go to 2 services, to share a desire. And when you share your desire, people are going to come on board, at least
Yeah.
ask more questions,
Yeah.
So everybody's on the same page.
So yeah, and this could be, I know this episode is about increasing Sunday attendance, and so your desire to reach more people. But this could be, I just found in anything, if there's any initiative or thing you're wanting to do, don't just wait to do it in a formal sense. Like if you having these one-on-one conversations is also really helpful. And so for us, talking about the importance of gathering, importance of maybe, some of these things we say from stage, you could also say in one-on-one things like, hey man, we're trying to get people, we're encouraging people to come 3 out of 4 Sundays. And maybe the person you're talking to is like super on board and they're not like they're there, but as they hear you say that language, they also might share it as well. And so if you have a desire to engage more people, again, not in a guilt way, not in a please be here way, but last year, I was just very hesitant to talk about growth and attendance because it feels very self-serving. Mm-hmm. And it's just got to the point where it's like these spiritual practices, there's lots of practices that are important, and the local gathering is one of them. Yeah. And so talking about it, again, not in a guilt way or a way you better be here, but a way like this matters, I think it's a helpful thing to do. And then last but not least, number 7 is to give more responsibilities to people. The reality is the more that people serve and are invested, the more they also give financially. Like it's just, if you think about the things that you're excited about too, like when you're excited about it, you spend more money on it, you spend more time on it. And so one of the challenges could be restricting how much people are serving and what people are doing. And I think last year or two, we didn't do a great job of this at New City of getting other people involved. And so one of our things this year is trying to give people more responsibility, gives them more ownership, makes them more excited. And so, even things like, we have a Sunday coordinator. We did this before COVID and then we kind of stopped and whatever. But it's like, yeah, we have someone who's, Brian's over hospitality, but we've got a coordinator each week who like runs the meeting, make sure everyone's in place. Different things in the band production, our worship guys moving in a month. And so, we're dividing it up among multiple roles. It's just the more responsibility people have, the more they're engaged, the more they're going to engage other people. And it's really nice too when you have a non-staff person leading something, because then it shows like, oh, this isn't just like the staff thing. Like they're excited about it. It's one thing for a staff person to talk about serving or giving or whatever. It's another thing when someone's not on staff and is talking about it. Like they know that there's no ulterior motivation there because they're just excited about it. And so trying to be intentional about giving more responsibility away, even if you don't have to. So like we're going to 2 services, so now it's maybe a bigger thing, but like we don't have to have a Sunday coordinator. Like Brian could just do it. Mm-hmm. We don't have to necessarily have certain serve roles. We don't have to do certain, but it's like giving things away so that it can grow and create ownership. Just trying to really think through what are some things that you could possibly give away or your staff is doing that you could give away to help create ownership among more people at your church.
And a lot of people actually do want to help. I know sometimes it seems like it's like pulling teeth to get people to serve. Yeah. But if you just send out an email and hope for someone to respond, it's not always going to happen. Like those, addressing them or coming and talking to them in person could be huge. Or, hey, I'd like to, let's get some coffee so we can really talk about these things. So, usually people aren't going to, I'm fine. I check my email probably more than I should. And I'm noticing
he doesn't have the Dylan Dawson method.
That's right. And others just don't check it at all.
Yeah.
And so trying to find ways to talk to them in ways that they probably enjoy or that they're more connected to, just shows them, hey, you don't just want someone to serve, you want me to serve. And I think that's a big thing. I think I'm the 4th week coordinator is how it's set up, and I'd love to get a 4th, and I think we've got 3 or 4 that would definitely be interested in it, and it kind of frees me up to serve them as they're serving others, and it's just a cool domino effect.
Yeah, when it comes to giving away, not everybody's going to want to do everything, but there are certainly some people that would do more or would like to do more at your church. And if given the opportunity, they would say yes. I think some of it is like people just assume they're not holy enough or they couldn't, why should I? But if you like extend, if you, especially if you're intentional like about like asking not just a general ask, but specific people, like, we do the Sunday coordinator thing, which is basically, Brian still schedules everybody or whatever, but the Sunday coordinator comes early. They write everyone's, we have lanyards, so they write everyone's name down. They're the one that leads the little huddle thing. They make sure things are going on, and all of them are way more invested because they're coordinators than before they were coordinators. And again, not everybody wants to be coordinator, but these are the people that we have. Like, we didn't say, hey, who wants to be a Sunday coordinator? I'm not saying you can't do that, but like we individually ask these people. And they were like, yeah, I mean, I guess me, why would I? Sure, So like, I would say too, if there's responsibilities you want to give away, and there's some things you don't want anyone to do anyway, or just anyone, like you want specific people, is to have those conversations. I think you'll be surprised by the people who thought, me, like a great way to see is if they're consistent and showing up and they're excited, they're probably someone who would like to do more, even if they don't ask, because they probably don't think they should. I would also say some people who you think, I don't think that they would do this well, like kill it. Like there's some people I'm just like, I don't know, but they're awesome. And like people love them for who they are. Yeah. Like they're, and so giving more responsibilities away to more people, not everything, but a challenge is like maybe there's 2 or 3 more people that we can give things to. And as they take on more ownership, again, they can say things that just people receive better. Not that they don't receive it well if you or someone on staff says it, but because they're not. And so for us, again, if you're interested in the Sunday coordinator thing, why don't you explain how it works, just so people.
Yeah, sure. So we have a Sunday coordinator for each week. So basically 4 weeks, even though there's a couple months that have 5. And they'll come in, I'd say, maybe about 30, 40 minutes earlier, like before we meet for our huddle, which is about 30 minutes before service. And they're really just, there to make sure all the lanyards are out so that when people come, they're not having to go and find it. They're the ones who are making sure that if there is a gap or if someone is sick or if it's a really busy Sunday at our Connect table where new people come and get information, they will step in. And so the coordinator is doing just that, coordinating all the different positions that we have and just making sure that they run properly, making sure that people are at their post. For us, it's 20 minutes before the service starts because you can get talking and lose track of time. So they're just kind of that person that glue every Sunday. They may not be doing something at a particular post. A lot of times they might because people get sick. But they're just that linchpin, I think, is or the hinge or whatever the word is.
And then they lead the huddle.
Yes, they lead
So they share the announcements, and another one that does a little vision thing and encourage people and all that sort of thing. And so that's the way to do it. Again, it's not like we absolutely need it right now, but it's a way to give more responsibilities away. So if there's, I don't know, if you have someone who likes to pick songs or helps with social media, or there's a Sunday position that you just need help with, trying to identify people, even if you don't necessarily need it, if you've got someone who can do it, that thing that can be a helpful thing. So.
And one other thing, I know I'm guilty of this as well, but when Dylan had said, I'm not sure if this person would be, equipped to maybe handle this, and they end up, killing it. One thing to just keep in check or to think about is someone may not do it the way you would do it, but it doesn't mean they won't do a good job, and that's it can be kind of humbling to watch someone do it differently, and you're like, ugh. But if they're doing it well and people are receiving it, then that's really all that matters.
It makes me laugh. It makes me think of my wife, Christina and I. We do things differently, and we were in our early years of marriage. She would ask me to do certain things, like I think it was our first apartment or our second townhome or whatever. I was the one that had to figure it out, and I did not do it the way that she wanted me to do it. I was like, so we had these conversations of she wanted me to call these. I forget how it worked, but I wanted to go and see them, and she was like, "Well, why did you do that way?" I was like, "Well, I don't, because I wanted to." So they might do it differently. And I was going to say one other thing too about that point. I don't know what it was. They might do things differently, and I don't know.
Yeah. Next week, 7 signs that you need counseling.
That's right. I don't know. Maybe I'll think about it. But giving responsibilities to more people, I'm really bummed because I was excited about what I just thought of. But yeah, just trying to be intentional with that, and even if they don't necessarily need it, or you don't necessarily need it, trying to give it away, and can help more people. And with Sunday attendance, they'll show up because if they got a responsibility, they're going to be here. And so that's a way to do that as well. So, hey, those are 7 tips for increasing your Sunday attendance. Some of these things are things that we're really pressing in on this year. So maybe in 3 to 4 months, we can give an update episode on how they're going. But hopefully some of those things were helpful for you. Again, other things we mentioned in this episode, the mission support. So missionsupport.com. Check out all their services. If you're stressed out with certain things, they probably got something to help you out. And the Practical Academy, practicalplanting.com. You can get the link, or in the show notes, you can join the sermon writing. Again, I've just found that's one of the biggest time racers and stressors for pastors who preach consistently is sermon prep. So how to do this in a schedule that doesn't stress you out. And of course, if you're on Facebook, join the Practical Church Planting Facebook group. We'd love to have you there. And we'll be with you next week on Practical Church Planting.